Can you hear us? You are muted. Hang on one second. Cool. Adam, are you there?
I'm there now. Yep.
Yes. All right. Oh, my goodness. So we are struggling a little bit with the live portion of this. I have no idea what's going on. So we got all these awesome people that are on the Zoom. So let's just go with that and get started. And I'll keep tinkering around with the live portion. Hopefully we'll get it all to work. Sound good to everybody? All right, perfect. So, hey, well, first of all, thank you all for joining us on this. This is an unexpectedly large group of people that have joined us on this Zoom call, which is super cool to check out like what we think is one of the coolest and most innovative new companies in the firearms industry. There's a lot of bias for this company around here, but we're really, really happy to bring Adam to this. He came to our anniversary event a couple of years ago, and people had a great time chatting with him about innovations in handguns and what they've been doing with the high capacity 1911, the wide body 1911s over the last several years. So I'm going to a couple just ground rules. I'm going to mute everybody but Adam as you guys come online. If you can mute yourself, that's even more helpful. And you can do that down like in the lower left-hand corner of your window. You hit your little mute button. That just keeps the noise down so everybody can hear what we're saying. If you want to join us, or if you want to, ask a question, there's a way. If you click on the participant button, you can raise your hand, and I'll see that you're there, and I'll make sure they get queued up. And if that doesn't work, then just jump in and annoy us. So I'm sure there'll be some dead air, and you're welcome to take advantage of that. So in the meantime, we have. Let me just introduce right now Adam from Atlas Gunworks. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, everybody.
So, Adam, we set this out to tens of thousands of people to join us. So there's a very good possibility there are people on this call that haven't actually heard of Atlas Gunworks yet. So I'd love to turn it over to you to hear a little bit more about these guns, about the innovations around this, and kind of how you got started in all of this.
I won't go crazy in depth, but basically I'm a competitive shooter, and these things were hard to get, and really hard to get the way I kind of thought that they should be built. I'll back up 10 years. You used to have to buy one of these, wait 2 years to get it, and then you'd have to send it to somebody else to do like the trigger job. And I'm like, this is crazy. Why doesn't just one place have a place you can go buy the gun and it be done? And I know the guns are expensive, but reasonable cost is part of our structure. And as time goes on, we're trying to do a couple things in the industry. One is make all the guns better, right? So we introduce a really good product, reduce the lead times, and then add a cost benefit to that too. And so you can't do them all at once, right? I'd probably take $1 billion and all my hair would fall. I don't have any hair, but if I did, it would probably fall out of my face. That's how stressful it might be. So the first thing was the lead time, and then the quality, right? I can do those two things at the same time. And so in that quest, what's really cool about Atlas Gunworks is that we kind of discovered that no one was building the guns to a caliber. So this is a site block. Morgan's going live on our stream, and somebody's like, hold the gun up. So apparently people want to see guns, but I'm more fun than me. But we got this concept of perfect zero, and like anybody, we're a little hard-headed. It took a couple of models to understand that we were already sort of doing this. Well, what we want the guns to do is lift and return to zero and not be wiggly and just stop where they came from, and return to the same spot. Zero means where they came from. So we now engineer the guns around that. That's our mindset. And we had been doing it. We had done it with this model with the Nemesis and 40 cal, and we had done it with the open guns, the Chaos, which really started it all. So we're doing it. I mean, we're in the process of doing it, but it wasn't front of mind. And then all of a sudden we're like, hey, no one's done this around 9mm. So then the Hyperion's born. And so anyway, that's our mindset now, is how do I make the gun return to zero? It's kind of just a physics equation, but so that's what we're out there doing. I think the quality level of the guns over the industry's probably come up a little bit since we started doing this. The lead times have come down for sure. I could prove that with everybody. So that's good. And the next phase here, which will take a couple of years, but you'll start to see the cost balance out a little bit. And they're never going to be $100 guns or $500 guns. It's a different process. But there is a way to do these that will change the price structure a little bit that we're working hard on, and keep the quality at the same bar, right? So the quality can't ever come down. So that's what we do here at Atlas Gunworks. We'll build 1,000 guns this year. We're not huge, but we're not small.
Awesome. Yeah. And then, so, just to kind of tee off what we're doing tonight, on top of this conversation, there's, we don't really, Atlas is kind of it's a very high end gun. So there's not a lot of sales on Atlas Gunworks pistols. So, but we are able to include some freebies tonight. So anybody interested in any of the pistols that are available on our website or on the Atlas Gunworks website under Buy Now, we're throwing in, you get an additional MBX Extreme mag with them. And Adam, you're throwing in that service the first year, the $250 quick turnaround service. It gets you your gun dialed in for the second season.
Yeah, so these cost as much as a used car, right? I don't even know if my first car cost $5,000.
Yeah.
So they probably they're machines. They should be serviced, and so we've kind of done, and I think we've laid it out that we'll have 4 levels of service coming up here, and the express service I think just came out. But most of our customers are shooters. You don't want to be a gunsmith, so let us deal with that. When the guns come in that once a year, it's no different than taking your truck down for an oil change, and the guy's like, hey, remember when you were off-roading and you felt that really big bump? Yeah, and your tie rod's loose. You might not know that or whatever, but let's fix it before it becomes a big problem. Same thing. If you're shooting bad ammo, or you changed your own recoil spring and the package said 11 pounds and it had a 6-pound in it, we'll catch all that. So, it's cheap insurance is the way I would look at it. Let the guys who do this every day look at the gun, make sure everything's kosher. You get a deep clean at the same time. It's really pretty cheap because we cover the shipping both ways.
Cool.
And then there'll be other levels of service added too. I guess we didn't set out to do this because I didn't see this in the beginning of the formation of Atlas. But it's really hard. These guns are machines, and if you're going to put hundreds of thousands of rounds on them, it's hard to it's hard to get them serviced, right? You can't send a gun in and wait 4 or 5 months for something simple. So we've kind of set the different cues of how we're going to do the service based on speed, so that we can keep guys shooting. It's just keeping guys on the range, right? Most of our customers at this point are sport shooters, and they're racing these things no different than cars. So your car's no good in the garage is the joke I always make.
Yeah, I got that. So look, and I'm looking at some of the names that are on this, that are following this right now, and there's probably 250,000 rounds a year being expended by this list on the right of your face right now. It's unbelievable. Look, I am, we've got the live stream working on Facebook right now, but I have no way of pulling the feed of the chat back. So if you're watching this on Facebook and you're posting questions, we're not going to get that done. So jump over and join us on the Zoom. All the instructions are there. We've got a couple of people who have joined us on Zoom by phone, and I'm going to unmute you so that you can join the conversation if you'd like to. My request is that you mute your phones so that we, if you're not asking questions, to keep it from getting really noisy on here. So let's open it up. We got any questions from anybody?
Mark, let me jump in for 2 seconds.
Please.
Morgan had one question pop up on the Insta thing that said, how are we going to lower lead times? And on our end, so the way that we did in the beginning was having a 60-day model, but the way that we're, which got pushed out to 90 when we got popular, it's pretty common. But what you're seeing, and to it's a scary thing, but it's happening right now. We're now we've doubled our ability to output guns, so we will literally do double what we did last year, and in that double most of those guns coming through in the pipeline in the front, I haven't pre-sold those. Atlas owns those guns. So we will have more and more in-stock flow coming. And I know that everybody watches the website and buys them quick when they pop up. But the goal is to have, one of each of the colors in stock most of the time. And that'll take a little bit. But those guns are in production now. And depending on where the demand flows, that will happen by year end at some point. We will have most of the models in stock most of the time. And the backside of that, for the guys who care, is we'll have a quick build process for that. So let's say you buy a 40 cal Titan hard chrome off the website, that there's a card in that, and it will immediately go in and cut the build line and go. And with production way up, that won't change anyone else's lead time. So now that gun's 30 days away or 40 days away instead of being 3 months away. And so all the building should be a little quicker here in the next 2 months. It's really fun. The coding is what really kills us, and it's probably not a 2020 thing where I can have the coding in-house, but we're talking to the coding guys about having our own machine. They're about $1 million, give or take, all set up. So we'll put coding in-house. When that happens, it'll significantly. That's a 30-day reduction in my lead time to begin with.
Awesome. Cool. Do we have any questions from the guys on Zoom? Anybody want to chime in? Shooting team.
Somebody else asked how much I overhead press, and they took the gym away from me, so I don't know anymore. But what did I do? I was doing 145 for fives.
Nicely done. Everyone's going to come out on the other end of this whole coronavirus thing, like either totally jacked or a complete mess. Those are like the two options. There is no middle ground.
No.
All right. We got a question from anybody on the Zoom right now.
What parts are outsourced?
Oh, that's a long list. How parts are outsourced? So our concept here is not make it all in house. I know that's a popular theme in the gun world. We make every part in house, and if we made springs here, we'd have to charge you $8,000 for something that's worth $5,000. So we don't do that. So the way that it works when we're deciding whether we're going to outsource or not is simply, can we buy enough supply of a quality part? So quality and can we get supply? So the two times you see us start to make parts in house are we can't get quality, or we can't get enough of them. And so at the moment, a good answer for this is almost all the round parts are outsourced. So we don't make mag catches, we don't make guide rods, anything that's made on turning machines. We just don't have turning capability here, right? So we run vertical axis, Haas and Akuma machines, but we don't run anything that has a turning. So you're spinning the part and cutting it while it's spinning. We don't do that yet. And there's not that many parts in the gun that are turn parts. But generically, the quick answer is all the turn parts are made somewhere else. And I don't think we make the sights at this point. Almost everything else is in-house or will be shortly.
Thank you.
No worries. It's a good question.
Cool. What else?
Somebody's kicking in on my end asking how many Titans a year. There's not a set number of Titans produced. So basically there's that system we're trying to implement where they come up on the website and then when we sell them, they go. That's in place. We just haven't got enough volume to fill, so they're always on the website. But that basically is a demand thing. So if everybody wants a Titan, we'll make a lot of Titans. Typically we see the Titans sell, they're about 30% of what we make. So let me guess 300 would be a good year-end guess.
Yeah, it just so happens we actually took one in the other day, a used 40 OG Titan. So if anyone's looking for one, this one does not qualify for the free mag or the service, but it's in really, really, really good shape. It was incredibly well taken care of. Adam Maxwell can tell you the whole story of this pistol if you'd like to know about it. So we got a couple of guys. One guy on this call is Adam Maxwell. He's on the shooting team, but used to be one of the salespeople here at Arnzen Arms, good friend of the shop and of Atlas. And I believe he sold this pistol. We can't say to who, of course, because that would be the wrong thing. He's giving me the hands up. But this gun has been well loved and a very low round count. And I think we have it for like 32 or $3,500 on the website. So this one is available right now for you USPSA guys.
Hi, so this is Jeff Larson. I interpret what you said before about turned parts to include the barrel. So your barrel is made someplace else?
Yep. So we're beginning of Q2 in 2020, right, when this is live. So today we have barrels in two forms. So you could potentially get a gun. I'm not holding one. I don't know if any of these do say that. I could probably hold one up that says, none of them actually, I don't think any of them have. But you could potentially get a gun right here that says Atlas on it, and that's a spec barrel we have made for us by a major manufacturer, but they're not turned here. And then KKM has been our long-term barrel provider, and both those guns head-to-head are pretty equal. Those barrels are head-to-head equal in accuracy. So the only reason for the Atlas spec barrels is because KKM doesn't have enough production for us.
Decided to go a different route, period.
No, we still use both, so both good barrels. The barrel making may never happen here. It's not a top priority for us. There's plenty of really good barrel options out there. Our biggest problem with barrels has been capacity. That the barrel makers can't. They are pretty busy to begin with, and they can't grow fast enough with us. So my problem is just getting barrels more than it is the quality. Pistols are inherently accurate. So even with a mediocre bullet and and terrible gunpowder and the bad case and the worst primer, it is not the same as precision rifles where all of that really matters. We're not spinning the bullet fast enough to make a huge difference. So the worst pistol barrel to the best pistol barrel in accuracy might be so close that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference on paper. We have a barrel fixture testing tool coming where we can just shoot the barrels before we put them in guns and check accuracy. So we'll start spot testing that. But the barrels are inherently accurate. And then the better manufacturers, it's not about, I've had this conversation with a lot of folks, so it's probably good to put this out there for everybody. It's not about, who makes the best barrel, right? So if you buy 10 barrels from the same manufacturer, what I care about is the spread, right, or the standard deviation. So if I go to XYZ company and they make a barrel that shoots a 1/4 inch at 50 yards out of a fixture, and by a fixture I mean it's in a metal fixture where it's just the barrel on a big cement block, it can't move. And if it shoots a 1/4 inch at 50 yards that way, and then I test the other 9 barrels and the worst one shoots 1 inch, that's too much of a spread. It's not about being accurate every now and then. It's about being really consistently accurate. And so the company we have making our spec barrels is a behind-the-scenes company. No one would know their name. They've got a really, really good track record. The testing we've done has been really great. KKM's got a really good track record for that. Their barrels have been phenomenal. And then CART, which we don't use as much because CART doesn't do bull barrels, and a lot of what we do, 95% or 99% of what we do is bull barrels. But the CART barrels are phenomenally accurate as well. So those 3 companies are probably the top 3. If you did a shootout between them, you could roll a dice and get a better result. I mean, there's no guessing who's going to win that. It might matter on just the day. So anyway, that's the vetting process for barrels. But barrels are a different animal in a pistol than it would be in a precision rifle. In a precision rifle, your chamber and barrel and how you load the ammo is everything. But we're not spooling bullets up to 3,000 feet per second, so it's a different equation there. Somebody's asking on my end if I was going to buy an Atlas today, which one would I buy? They're purpose-built, so it depends on what sport. But my favorite Atlas guns to shoot are the 4.6-inch 9mm guns. They're just fun to shoot. I think, not that and I'll probably talking too much on. We'll get back to questions when I'm done this part. But 40 caliber is dying. 9 majors still popular because USPSA has the power factor super high. I just wrote a letter to the board of USPSA asking them to lower that power factor. It's just not safe at 165. It's shooting 9mm. It's just not. And so I think what you're going to see is as the time goes on, it's going to be 9mm. 2-gun, 3-gun, steel challenge, all the things with just regular 9mm ammo. And I've test fired so many guns that I really don't want to shoot major power factor. When I go test fire, I'm like, oh, it's a 9. I'm just so sweet. I guess I'm holding a Helios, but yeah, same thing almost. You're like, why do we have all this energy? We don't need it. And then in the law enforcement world, 9mm is taking over. So like all our carry guns are only a 9mm because, we see that trend. And when we started, we didn't build a lot of 9mm limited guns almost. And now we build more 9s and 40s. So the trend is there. 9mm is going to own all the sports pretty soon.
Yeah, it'd be
finding
great to hear
some-
from some of the shooting team guys who've switched from the 5-inch gun to the 4.6, the Hyperion or the Athena, on like what their experience has been on that. Does anybody want to chime in on that?
So I came from a 5.4-inch 9mm, coming from the STI, actually shooting 3 guns.
Yeah.
Switching over to the Hyperion, the first thing that I noticed is the ability to have the gun, of course, come back to 0, which is what Atlas is known for. But also just the way that the whole gun handles and speed of transitions and all that stuff, it feels so much better. I've run everything through it, everything from Tula, steel case ammo, through your high-end, Federals to your synthetic coated bullets. I've run it all, and it runs great. But the difference between, a lot of people talk about the sight radius as being a major issue. And if you actually put on a target and see what the sight radius does at 10, 15, 20 yards, there is some minor difference between the 5-inch, 5 1/4, 5.5-inch guns versus the 4.6, but it's very minimal. And frankly, I just like the way the gun shoots.
Got it. Really cool. Anybody else from the team want to chime in on that?
Well, can you hear me all right? This is Cody.
Hey, Cody, how are you, man?
Good. So I went the opposite way. I had the Titan for the longest time. I shoot 40 caliber. And so I shot the 5-inch Titan for 2+ years. And then the first time I got my hands on the 5 and whatever it is, 5 1/4, 5.3-inch Nemesis in 40 caliber. And I mean, it immediately was noticeable what Adam always talks about with the perfect 0 design. The gun returned to 0 so much better. So yeah, with that gun, it has a lot of weight and it's kind of unwieldy. So if I had the choice of shooting 9mm, I would definitely shoot a smaller gun. But since I shoot 40 caliber and I shoot limited, the extra weight is really important for the gun to kind of settle nicely and for me to kind of get in a rhythm when I'm shooting and feel more comfortable. But yeah, if I was shooting, it does make me jealous sometimes of like the 3-gun guys who get to shoot like these small, light 9mm guns, or like the Hyperion, because I'm sure that gun is awesome to shoot and it's really comfortable. I get a little sick of the recoil. So I like shooting limited major. I'm kind of with Adam too, of like, man, shooting major kind of gets old after a while. Like my hands I get beat up by it. And if I could shoot 9mm all the time, it'd be nice. But I went the opposite way of doing the bigger gun because I shoot major, and the Nemesis has been great for that purpose, for the purpose that it's built for, of the big heavy gun for the big heavy caliber. It's amazing.
That's great. Thanks.
So
Cody.
my pitch, Cody, to USPSA was, and I didn't pitch this, but the back end to the secondary pitch here is go to 9 for limited and then just shoot plus P ammo. So you could practice at a slightly under, whatever the power factor should probably be 145 or 150. Well, then we could do it with 9 safely, and then we could do it for limited potentially if they change the bullet diameter. So we get best of both worlds. That's what I'm angling for. You might see us put out the Atlas rules this year, where we just change the 3 or 4 rules that don't make sense. They got a good thing going there. It's slow to react, like any group that's been around for 30 years or more. Whenever, Mark, I got a million questions over here, so if you want me to go, I can.
Yeah, just roll with it. It's great.
Somebody's asking what ships with the guns. So you're going to get your gun. We ship them all in a soft case. We used to do a hard case, and people sent them back in like bags, like the crappy, low padding bags. And so we now send them, and they have like a memory foam case that has slots for your up to 7 mags. They come with 1 mag, cleaning oil. Morgan's made me a list here. A spec sheet, stickers, and a patch. And then ammo recommendations, which is really easy on the 9 guns. It's just the ammo recommendations is shoot factory, whatever, Good
Yeah.
factory ammo is what I should say. So my favorite two or three, I should say, is the PMC bronze ammo is really good, inexpensive. The Blazer brass ammo is really good and inexpensive. And then the Super Vel makes one called a Hush Puppy that's super soft in these. That's nice. Next question.
Before you jump in,
go ahead.
yeah, real quick. And then tonight, of course, if you order one of the buy now guns from the Atlas site or at Arnzen, there's an extra magazine and that free service included as well.
Question on our end is, do we see ourselves in the tactical market soon? There's some really, really cool stuff that I was sworn to secrecy that I can't talk about, but there's the R&D here is, and we've done a R&D as we went, but it's interesting how, so we start a company, right? And we started this, I self-funded this, so we didn't take any money from outside investors. My business partner, Todd, is the master machinist. It's just him and I. He's the mechanical part. I'm the rest of it. And so when we start the company, you're busy just trying to keep the thing afloat and trying to build guns. And so we've had a little bit of time to do innovation here. But we moved into the building, we're into April. So we moved into the building that I'm sitting in now 3 years ago, in 2017, I believe. And since then, we've gone, so when we moved here, there were 4 employees, and there's 17 today. And so what that does is it allows, and we just eclipsed the point where we pretty much have a department head for each of the departments. So Todd and I can really do the R&D stuff. So we've had a bunch of projects that have been slowly rolling that now here in the next, in fact, our last piece of the puzzle, his name's Joe, is our new programmer for the CNC stuff. He just came on board in the last 15, 20 days. So when Joe's up to full speed, that'll really let us go at, the R&D and the projects and really improving the platform. So the tactical market stuff's for sure the big market. We know that. And we'll have some super cool stuff coming on that front. And then there's some really cool competition stuff coming here in the fall as well.
So I'm curious if I can interrupt some questions here. So we got one of our guys here actually 2 of our guys here that carry Atlases as their carry gun. Like that's their go-to. What would look different for your tactical guns versus your competition guns right now? If you want to speak to that.
The platform here is 100 years old. There's some parts to it that are really, really cool. The fact that they could even make a single stack 1911 100 years ago blows my mind with the equipment they had, because it's not a simple design. People advertise that it's a simple design. It's super intricate, and when you really understand it, and I don't even know if when we were doing that, it probably took me 3 or 4 years to really understand, to really have your head wrapped around how detailed it is. And I'm not saying I know everything about the gun. I'm saying I know enough to know how crazy detailed these guns are. We don't go a month here where we don't learn something new, right? So there's always things the platform can do. And so what you saw happen in the 90s when late 80s, early 90s, when all the competitive action shooting stuff popped up, is everyone tried to make these race guns, right? And so race guns, I mean, that's a broad definition, but the thought process is we want to make them faster. So that's cool. We started our company building race guns. It's still the majority of what we do. And so you back that into a carry or a tactical gun, and you're willing to make some trades there. And this design really lends itself to the race guns, and there's some features in it that I really think would work better to be deleted in a tactical gun. And so, and one of them, for instance, I mean, the race guys don't want to work in grip safety. That's a weird one where I think in a tactical market, I don't want that either. If you really understand these guns, the grip safety is a liability. Yep. It causes more problems. There's plenty of guys with big hands who can't activate them. I'm 100% positive there's some guys who've been in a gunfight and they pulled the trigger and nothing happened because they didn't have that grip safety forward. Thumb safeties do what they need to do in this platform. So that's one thing I would take from the tactical market. But simplifying some of the things like the extractor and changing potentially the way the magazines work, those would be your big two, making this gun really bulletproof. There's a reason what you're seeing in law enforcement all over the world is that they're willing to spend money on equipment, right? It's been their trend. So if you looked at a law enforcement budget in the 80s, they didn't have any money. They just didn't have any extra money. And all across the world, law enforcement budgets are pretty big, and they have dollars, and they do training, but they want the best equipment they can get. And that goes true for special forces guys too. And there's a reason that there's a bunch of reasons they're not using these, but it doesn't have quite that Glock reliability. You know, if we want to pick on Glock for really having guns dialed in on the reliability. So we're working on that, and that's probably a combination of things to get that to all flow. But that's front of mind. You'll see a tactical gun from Atlas, hopefully at SHOT Show 21.
Awesome.
So I hope that sort of answered that question without me telling too much. Mark's giving me
that's good.
Don't give away this trade secret. Morgan's kicking in here with which model was first time shooters. So if you want to own a nice gun and you've never owned a really high quality gun, or you want your next one or whatever, I always buy a 9mm, right? Ammo's cheap, it's easy to get. Well, those two things were true, a month ago, but it will be again. And the reason is it's just volume. There's more of that being made. A lot of the ammo companies compete price point on the 9mm ammo. A lot of them will lose money to sell that. So you get a benefit of it being the least expensive round to shoot. And there's a bunch of different ammos you can do different things with. So it depends a little bit maybe on who I am, but for the average guy with average grip pressure, I'm probably buying a Hyperion. I'm not. The Athena is the sister gun to this with a sight with a sight on the back. But I don't, or an optic on the back. But I'm not an optic guy. So a Hyperion would be my first choice. If you want an optic, it's an Athena. But I think those are 1 and 2. Morgan says to mention that we have those in stock.
Yes.
Which one? Oh, this gun. This is this Hyperion. These are almost never in stock. I think this one just came.
Yeah,
today.
we go through the Hyperions really, really fast here at Arnzen.
Mhm.
We've got the Athena in right now. The hard chrome sister went this morning before this thing, or last night. And then we've got one of the new Helios, which I haven't spent a whole ton of time with, but that's the IDPA legal kind of version of the Hyperion, right?
Correct. Yep, a little bit shorter, 4 1/4 gun day. To run a bull barrel in IDPA, you got to be a little bit shorter.
Okay.
That's to compete with the Wilson, EDC guns.
Is it? Okay. Got it.
Yep.
But the Hyperion has been wildly successful here. So if you're looking for a first pistol, that one, everybody that we put that with just has smiles on their faces.
To my knowledge, it's the first gun somebody built around 9mm in this chassis.
Mm-hmm.
Where they said, all right, we don't care. I didn't care. When we designed it, I didn't care how long it was going to be, right? You could have a 4.8 or a 4.7-inch barrel. Like, those 4.6-inch barrels are custom made. That's not something off the shelf. That's what the number that worked, so we made it work. Morgan's jumping in with a couple of questions. Will 145 power factor work with a comp? So for the shooters who don't know a lot about comps, there's so many myths about comps, and so many companies have sold a comp as it's the greatest thing and it'll make your gun flat. And most of the time on 9mm guns, the comp just breathes fire. It really isn't doing what you probably hope it's doing. And so there's a couple reasons for that. One, to get a comp to work at the end of a 4.6 or a 5-inch or a 5.5-inch barrel, I need to still have some pressure left. And to do that, I got to run a slow-burning powder. Almost no off-the-shelf 9mm ammo is running a slow-burning powder. Almost zero. So that when you're buying a gun made by a major manufacturer and they've got a comp or something on there, it's going to throw some flames. But are you really getting a performance bump? No. What you're probably seeing, and I've had a lot of guys go, "Oh, I've shot this comp gun, XYZ comp gun, and it's so flat." And I'm like, "Yeah, you got a sight block on the front with a hole in the top." So okay, that's cool. Can we make a comp work with 145 power factor? Absolutely. You got to run a slow burning powder. So, for example, if you took, and so I think that might be a question leading into my My pitch to USPSA dropping their power factor. If you run a chaos at 165 is the minimum now, so you run at 169, 170. If you run a chaos at that and then go load that same load, same powder, and just drop the volume down to get you to you wouldn't run 145 if that was the hard deck, right? You'd run 150. So if you're running that at 150 power factor, it's just as nice a gun, just way less violent. Same tracking. We'd probably spring change depending on your grip pressure, but you get the same exact result. But on the carry guns was my first part of that. Yeah, the comps don't do is you don't see us doing that because it's just not really something that works. Morgan's asking me 9mm or 38 super comp. I'll be super quick on there. There's like 4 or 5 advantages to super comp, but none of us shoot it. It's expensive. You got to buy brand new brass, and do that deal. I could make an argument that super comp, part of what the real thing that sets super comp apart, and all these guys who are like, oh, get a super comp, you won't crack your slide. That's not true. The pressures run they're so similar in those two. Super comp's not like crazy phenomenal in that world. It's going to be like 1 or 2 or 3% in our guns. So discount other folks because they might have a different design. But in our guns, it's going to be somewhere between 1 and 4% softer. A little less dot rise. Not noticeable. I wouldn't deal with the brass problem for that. And then the real advantage, the only real advantage to super comp is there are very few brass manufacturers. Your brass will be very consistent. 9mm brass is super not consistent. It's inconsistent between some of the major manufacturers, probably in some tolerance that we could all live with, but there's all these foreign importers who just do whatever. They're not semi-spec. It's narrow, it's wide, whatever. So your biggest disadvantage with 9mm is that the brass is inconsistent at the base. And then the other bad part about 9mm potentially is that you might have a case that got fired out of someone's carry gun that has a wicked unsupported chamber. So the guy you bought it from rolled it back, so now it fits in your gun, but there's that it's all weak in that low spot and it's going to break. That's common, and it wouldn't break at normal loading pressures, but take it up to major power factor. And we got a potential problem. And so here's my trick. If you're going to shoot 9mm major, it's really simple. Just go to major matches with brand new brass in your gun. You're never going to have an issue. That's the simple solution. And if you're doing 38 super, do the same thing. If you're doing 40, do the same thing. I go to every single major match. My comment to guys on the phone is, if you care about your place and you roll up there with used brass in your ammo, for the $50 or $40 you saved, you are taking a major risk. There's just no way to control. And if you've ever been on the range a ton, brass just goes everywhere. You could find a piece in the bottom of your truck, throw it in your reloading thing, and it turns out it came out of some crappy thing and it came off someone's shoe. It gets everywhere. So the idea that you've got your own once fired brass, I don't believe in any of that. Just run brand new brass at majors. Yeah. Problem solved.
Got it.
Morgan says, how much ammo do we use per week in test fire? I don't order the ammo, so I don't know. Probably a couple thousand rounds at least. And then her second follow-up question is, could you run major in an Erebus with a spring change? Not and keep your warranty in place. It's a short answer. It's not designed for that. Could you do it? So here's a concept for you guys about major, and clearly we've got a lot of sport shooters on. So major, if you're not a sports shooter, major power factors, USPSA's got a limit to how fast the combination of the speed and the bullet weight are to get it to go to a certain amount of energy to pass your deal. All the guns will take major power factor for some period of time. Right? No different than will your boat motor run at 10,000 RPMs? I'm sure it will. How long is a different question. So, so a really good example is the carry guns. What's beautiful about this platform for a carry gun is you can shoot major power factor ammo out of these things for a couple of mags and not have any issues. Can you shoot 20,000 rounds out of a carry gun set up that way? No, that's not. You will break something. and you could potentially design a special gun around that, but it's not really the purpose. So the beauty of 9mm and why you see a lot of us, law enforcement, I think, military, and us only building guns in 9mm, go practice with 115 grain ammo, no problem, and carry plus P ammo. You know, and plus P is well under the major power factor. Plus P plus gets in that zone. It's just underneath typically. I just spent last weekend. I spent a whole day chronographing carry ammo, and I had the carry gun that's in my truck right now is a 4 1/4 with an aluminum frame, and I shot every carry ammo I could get my hands on. I've been stockpiling for almost a year, and fed it all great. Chronograph great. We had some. We got up to 161 power factor in off the shelf carry ammo. And again, I would always go test the gun and make sure it runs that. But, you know, don't shoot thousands of rounds that way. But if you need to carry something and you need, you know, that extra zip, that's what makes these awesome. You know, way better than the super cheap plastic $300, you know, guns by the big boys. They're not made to do that. Two different animals.
Hey, Adam, so Charlie has a question for us. Which is harder, building the best guns on the market or educating people on how to properly feed and maintain their Atlas guns properly?
It's probably the 80-20 rule certainly applies to the educating folks, right? So there's some folks who chew up some time on you know, it takes them a while to come to the same conclusion. The beauty of Atlas and the videos and all the stuff and is we're out here doing this. Like these products and our education process was me saying to myself when we started the company, I had to go on like 100 different forums and read 1 million comments to get an idea on how ammo worked or this or that. And so my general thought process is we came to a pretty good conclusion, and I'll just give that to people for free. So you can skip all the trying to read 800 comments and which guy knows what he's talking about, and figure those things out. Because that was the way it happened 10, 15 years ago. The information wasn't out there. So the reason we do so much of the education is just because, you know, it's easy and we're good at it. And I think we have it'd be hard to argue with our stance on a lot of the different things that we put out there. And building the guns, they're pretty different. You know what? It probably depends on the day. You could call here and get me right after a phone call I didn't particularly enjoy. And I'd probably tell you the customer education part's the hardest part. And then you could get us on a day when, you know, and then I'm trying to think of a good example. You get us at a day where one of the machines was off by a couple thou, you know, and we're throwing out slides or whatever else. And that doesn't happen a lot, but it certainly isn't easy every day. But so there's peaks and valleys. So I'll say they're even. There's my final answer.
Down the middle. I mean, if this was still the forum era, we'd still be talking about barrels for the first 15 minutes of this conversation.
Right. And have no conclusion.
Exactly. But I'd be right, and so would you. We'd go home and tell our friends we won. So good. I don't miss the forums. I don't know about you guys. Oh, goodness. Anybody on the Zoom got a question before we jump back to Instagram Atlas, which is definitely winning the question game right now?
Poor Morgan's holding boards up and writing on the back, and she's going crazy over there.
She's the best. All right. We'll take something from the Atlas. What do you guys got going over there?
So somebody asked if we're going to make a Nemesis 10 millimeter Nemesis. The prototype versions of those guns, I should say they're prototypes, but those guns exist, the early ones, and there's 1 or 2 in production now. But so somebody asked us to build 2 10 millimeters and in a Nemesis setup. And so in theory, you're like, oh, we'll just long chamber a 40. I guess it's doable, not a big deal. And we built 10 millimeter guns before. And so in the design process, my business partner Todd's like, what if we put a comp in the end of that? How would that be? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. My knowledge of 10 millimeter ballistics is like near zero. I go, it's a fast 40. Okay, cool, whatever. So anyway, he asked, and I'm like, I don't know. I go, pull one on there and shoot it. So they just literally screwed titanium comps, which we wouldn't have used, but onto a 10 and went and shot it. And I wasn't even there that day. I was out of town, and they're like, oh, it's better. And I'm like, okay, we'll make that same thing out of steel, right? Knowing that the added weight will get a 2-for-1 benefit. And so we can build that gun with normal 10 millimeter ammo to feel pretty close to a 40. It's pretty phenomenal. They return to zero really, really well. It's a limited market, so but there is going to be a Nemesis 10 probably on the website at some point for the guys. You know, if you want to go get hogs, that's probably the ultimate hog gun. The downside to 10 millimeter is the ammo length varies a fair amount in OAL, and the mags have a limit, and some of the ammo is running right up on that mag limit. So different people will tell you different things about the wide body mag design, but it's sub 1.3, right? So it's really 1.2, 1.24 is kind of what I tell guys is their max OAL. So, you know, just under an inch and a quarter. So the 10 millimeter ammo runs right in that zone, and so you get problems with the bullets dragging if you don't have. So you're gonna spend a bunch of time with the mags, which is unpleasant for us. But we've made them work. They work good when you do them. It's cool. Morgan is diligently writing. Erebus versus Athena, faster and smoother. I wouldn't. So the Erebus is the 3-gun model with a comp. And I've already made fun of comps, so I probably have to pick the Athena. Both of them do a really nice return to zero. If you're shooting 3-gun and you're an open 3-gun shooter, I can load ammo for the Erebus and dial it in and edge out the Athena, but only spending a enormous amount of time dialing ammo in. Right out of the box, they're going to be so close. I just skip the comp. So that's my take. Now, her next question, Hyperion L versus Nemesis in 9 millimeter. So Hyperion L is not a real gun, per se. There is one. It's a prototype we built. And, yeah, and it got on Gunbroker, Morgan's reminded me, not that long ago, so everyone's asking questions about it because it's been seen. We built a Hyperion basically with a titanium block up front for a sight block, right? Don't get me wrong, it is probably better for whoever owns that than 99% of guns ever built in the world on this platform. But it didn't have quite the return to zero. It wasn't so remarkably better than a Hyperion that we were going to go build that as a gun. And so I would rather shoot the Hyperion than that gun, but they're really, really close. And so not to be too revealing, but there is a sight block 9 millimeter dedicated gun in the works. Don't email the staff tomorrow and ask when it's going to be ready. I don't know. We're the very first prototype I shot today, and that's not the final version. So we're big enough now. When you're little, when you're like the 1-man or 2-man gun show, you know, gun builder guys, you come up with an idea, you go build it, you go shoot it, and you tell the world about it because it's really good marketing. We're just big enough now that doesn't work. It causes more problems than it helps. So we're in a cycle where when we're doing the R&D stuff, we might tell somebody about something that's coming, but the real things won't get released until it's a finished product ready to go. And it's, you know, they'll be in production when they get released. We're that big now. I say we're that big. We're little, but we're not SIG by any means, but we're not building, but it's not 2 guys, you know, in a super small shop. At this point, you know, I have to go get the machine shop to make me slides, and then we got to get the parts, and then we got to teach the build guys how they're different than the other guns. It's a process, so it's not nearly as fast as it used to be. Somebody's asking on our end, thoughts on progressive springs. So progressive springs, if you're not familiar with it, Wolf is the company primarily who makes them, but they make a regular conventional spring, so the coils are even throughout the spring, and then they make a spring where the coils spool up, and you can get them to happen usually on the tail end, but they could, in theory, be spooled up any which way, so you're tighter on the front or the back. I know guys who love them, and I'm not telling you to run away from them, but I've never seen any testing where I liked. They just didn't. There's never been a spot where they worked well for me, and so I haven't put them in every single gun we've ever built. There probably potentially is a spot where they worked. I wouldn't waste my time. That's my 12-second answer. I haven't seen the benefit to the point where I would waste my time. You know where I think you'll do even better, and I'm working hard to try to get this to on our website. We're working on having Atlas springs available. And again, we won't make them here, but we've got a really good partner that we're working with. And we're going to try to do them in half-pound increments. And so my gripe, if you're a recoil spring person, the problem with recoil springs is you get a package and it says it's a 12-pound spring and it's not, right? Whatever it is, it's not. And my joke is that that's a 39 or 25 cent part to the manufacturer. They don't. I know you pay $10 for them, and that sucks, but they don't care. They are not testing every one of them. So get a spring tester. I know Morgan's putting up a thing that we just did the spring tester video, but there's only one company that really makes one. It's a fish scale with a little cool thing they built, but it works. But watch our spring tester video if you haven't. And I wouldn't put a spring in a gun I didn't test. I don't trust them. We have a big bins. We buy them, a couple hundred at a time, and you could go to the 8-pound bin and pull out 3 of them and go all the way from 9 pounds all the way down to 7. And it's not dangerous in that zone with a with a 9mm minor gun, but take a USPSA open gun and we think we're putting a 7 in and we put a 5.5 in, right? And what the spring does is, for the longevity of the gun, is when this comes back, there's a guide rod reverse plug tunnel here, and that hits the guide rod. So you see us run shock buffs too. We just did that video. But when that comes back, the spring's going to slow it down. So there's some impact, and we want that impact to be mitigated as much as it can by the spring. So if we had one, the first, I think the only 40 cal gun we've ever had crack a slide. So the guy calls and he's like, "Oh, I cracked my slide," and you're like, "How do you do that on a 40 cal gun? He hasn't had it that long." And I'm like, "Where'd it crack?" And he goes, "And it's right up here." And I'm like, "I've never even heard of one crack in there." So anyway, he sends the gun back, and he got, and I'll promote Atlas springs when they come out because I think we'll have a superior product. But in the meantime, the Wolf springs are the best springs you can get. And this was another brand. I won't say the name, but it was an 11-pound bag with a 6-pound spring in it. And so he did this until this cracked and the frame cracked right there too with it. So he just beat the gun apart, right? Nobody can build a machine that can smash itself together. And it went a long time. It went 6,000 or 7,000 rounds like that. But don't trust the springs. Get a spring tester. That's my rant.
Hey, Amax asked about flat wire springs.
Yeah, so we've been running those in the carry guns. I know that they have a pretty serious following. They feel way different. They work. They just feel way different. And I'll tell you that we just switched the carry guns over to a regular spring. Dawson came out with a short 4.1-inch toolless guide rod with a conventional spring, and we switched the carry guns over to that. And I tested that simultaneously with all the carry ammo the other weekend in the gun that I'm running, and I really like the way it tracks and recoils better. So I'm not for or against them. You got to run a different guide rod, and I think you see the really, really competitive guys at the highest level running conventional springs for a reason. I don't know that I go down the rabbit hole of testing, and there might be an answer there, but I doubt that it's way better.
Got it.
Somebody's asking on our end if shock buffs change spring weight. They shouldn't change it. They're going to shorten the spring a tad. So in certain cases, you might have to trim your spring. That's the other part of the spring conversation. The springs are cut off by this big, huge, where they run through the machine and at the end it just gets cut. That machine's not perfect, so you might get a long one. So again, we do another video on coil binding or whatever. You want to make sure your spring's not too long. But shock buff should not change your not any significant amount. Let's say that. I don't know. Morgan's got like these are like detailed questions.
So Cody's asking, have you seen any issues with toolless guide rods? I run them in all my guns, but I've heard horror stories. On the toolless guide rods. Yeah.
I've heard horror stories too, and I think I've only seen one break, and it didn't break in like a catastrophic way. I don't know. There's one in my carry gun right now.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the data to prove that. There's some longevity issues with them potentially way up in the. So the way that you make a guide rod is really complicated depending on how you do it. If you do it correctly, like they would in a machine gun or like, some of the military stuff, is you, and I won't have the details on this. I've never done it, but you basically forge the head on to the rod is the proper way to do it. And it makes it, if you do it right, it makes it like 50 times stronger. So I'm imagining, based on the data that I've seen, that when they're saying that people have had catastrophic problems with toolless guide rods, it was probably early toolless guide rods. There was probably some problem in the manufacturing process that's been now worked out. You see the shooting community run to new products, just run like, oh, here's this crazy new this, and what almost every gun industry or manufacturer's done for hundreds of years, not just now, but they use the customers to beta test. Right? And we try really hard here not to do that. There's a lot of prototype guns that get remade into something else. They don't leave the floor here because it's just not something that we want to turn loose on the public. But beta testing with customers really isn't cool. And so almost, and in fairness, that some of the with your first week in business, you probably don't have much choice. That's probably the way it works. That probably is a beta test. But that is what I'm guessing that's probably going on there. So I'd run toolless guide rods without fear.
So on that real quick, I'm curious if you want to give away this portion of it. How many rounds go through each gun that goes out the door? I mean, how much are you testing those guns?
It matters a whole bunch. And that it doesn't matter on the gun. I know everybody's like, oh, which guns get all the rounds? It matters a little bit in our building process. So the more dialed in things are, the more things are working the way they're supposed to, just from as parts are coming through and the tuning's going on and how well things are coming off the build bench. The standard is at least 2 mags. And then if things aren't awesome, you'll see it could go up to 4 mags, 5 mags. Max is probably a couple hundred rounds. It matters too how well test fire goes, right? So we have like a 9 sequence thing where all these things need to happen. And so, for example, and I used to do all the test fire myself, and I don't now. We're turning enough guns out, I can't do it all. But whoever's doing the test fire, let's say we have an ejection pattern we like, and so let's say the gun's just not quite doing that ejection pattern. It's going to go back inside and start that and get worked on and start that process over again. So you could potentially get it. I mean, I've had customers say, "Oh, the ramp's really dirty," and I'm like, "All right, it probably had a couple hundred rounds on it before it left." We don't re-clean your ramp, but So the variance is, 50 to 200 probably.
Cool. We've got another
Morgan's
question.
got questions all
Go
over
to
the
Morgan.
place. Go ahead, Morgan, is that a warranty question? Oh, if 145 power factor will current Atlas 9mm. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still confused by the question. She's right. This board is detailed. Oh, yeah. Oh, they want to know if the 9 minor guns will run 145 power factor. Yeah, you should. So the question is, let's say they change the power factor in USPSA to 145. So now this gun is a limit, and they change in limited. They'd have to change the bullet diameter down to 9mm 355 instead of 400. But would this gun run that power factor? And the short answer is you probably need a spring change, but it would, yeah. Morgan's got more questions.
Yeah, I got one from Adam, another one from Adam too. He's asking about hard fitting barrels.
Yeah, maybe Adam should hop on and explain that a little bit for the audience.
I've heard a little bit of talk lately, guys talking to other builders and other builders, past and present. They talk about the hard fit barrel process. Does Atlas hard fit barrels, or what's the barrel fitting process that you use?
So hard fit barrels is primarily that came from the ultra accuracy world. So your bullseye shooters and guys like that. And so hard fit is basically you run the barrels extremely tight and then you shoot them in at the end. And so the gun's actually mechanically beating itself together at the end of that process. I don't have a strong opinion on hard fitting barrels, but we don't do it. So the 1911 is a really interesting gun in that if you look at the John Browning prints and you follow that print model, and you keep the numbers pretty close to where he originally had them, you will get a spectacular firearm. And what we've seen over the years is everyone has their own take on his design, and they're changing the guns tremendously. So they start changing where the slide stop pin is, right? So that's going to move your barrel link, change where your barrel link's going to hook up, and then they start moving, different geometry in the frame and different geometry in the slide. And now they've got some weird version of a 1911, but it's not really a 1911. So what we do is the process we use is called fit by numbers. But there are a bunch of spec numbers inside of that gun, and we expect all of those to match. And there's a range. It's not always, it might be 250 to 255 or whatever. But we build them to the numbers. The hard fitting the barrels has a bunch of inherent problems with it. One, you don't know. Sometimes it could go south, right? So we let the gun being really tight and we shoot it, and then there happens to be one weak piece of carbon steel on one, either the barrel or the slide, and it breaks off, and you got to start over, right? So that's not ideal. The second part, the part you really don't want, is when the end user gets the gun, it's not really ready to go. Most of that work is going to be done by them. Some guys are maybe hard fitting them and shooting them enough to get them in there, but that process really takes a long time for a break-in period. And so over the years, you've heard me tell you that you shouldn't get a gun at this price point and have to break it in. And we totally believe that here. The exception is every now and then we'll get guns where the coating, the ion bond or DLC or whatever coating we're using is a little bit thick and it takes a little longer to kind of settle in. It's better to let that settle in sometimes on its own than to take it off, lap it off with the frame and slide fit or whatever. But ideally, the concept here is you get the gun and go out and take factory ammo and shoot it, and it's got ready to go. And that can't be done with hard fit barrels without shooting the gun a ton, which would add a ton of money to the price. And I have not seen where the accuracy really is that different. If you nail the numbers, which is hard to do, but if you nail the numbers, the guns will be accurate. Accuracy is it's not a big issue if you do it right. So no, we don't hard fit them. We're not going to. That won't change. Morgan's kicking in with, could we build a carry gun for $3,000 without cutting corners? That's a fun question. We built a USPSA limited gun not that long ago called Project Cheapy, where we've only built 2 guns ever with plastic grips. That was one of them. It's been retrofitted with a metal grip now. But the goal is probably something like $3,000 for limited guns and carry guns in the most basic form with metal grips. That's in the long term works. Can it be done today? No. And some of what you get from a cost standpoint is what parts we make here. So as the bigger components are made here, and as some of the components that take the most time to hand fit are made here, and we can control some of that quality and dial them in, that will drastically lower the cost of the guns. Right? There's two costs to building any gun. There's the parts, and so we don't make every single part, and neither do most of the huge manufacturers. They're all subbing all that work out. But what are you paying for the collective amount of parts, and then how much work and assembly does it cost to put the gun together? And that involves building the gun that works, doing the final assembly, doing all the finish work. We do way more finish work than a lot of the companies kind of that we compete with as far as hand sanding the guns and doing all that stuff. So, it's not just the 2 equations. It's time and the parts. So we're working on that equation. What you'll get is a much more matte colored gun, and then you'll get a lot more of the parts made in-house by Atlas, which drives the cost down.
Hey, Adam, I got a question for you. So something that comes up quite a bit when I'm talking to folks about getting a custom 2011 built for 3-gun is the 5.5 and even 6-inch guns for 3-gun shooting 9mm minor. Can you comment on that? Like your position, Atlas's position on the long pistols?
So the beginning of the story, as far as like my experience with the long guns, is I used to shoot a 6-inch 40 cal. I think before the metal grips, we all did. They were just way softer. They had a nice the recoil of the gun is just an equation, right? It's a physics equation. So make this plastic, right? Take 10 ounces out of the bottom of this thing, and then back then almost nobody ran the long dust covers either, so it had a bunch of weight out here, and so the guns just the 6-inch 40 cals were really really nice. Invent metal grips. We put metal grips on those 40 cal guns, and then they were wicked soft. But then you shoot them against a 5-inch gun with a metal grip, and you're like, they're not soft enough for the extra weight out front, right? It's this balance of where we go. And so the problem with the question that you're proposing is we've got a 9mm round with almost no energy. So I'm going to take this big, huge, clunky slide, right, and try to get it to move. So the guns, when I shoot those guns, they feel super doggy. You cha-ching, waiting, cha-ching, it's slow. And so the only reason to have the long gun is the sight radius. And I don't see the difference in most of your shooting inside of 45 yards. Start getting out 45 plus, 100. I get why you want the longer sight radius. There's a couple of options there. One is to change your sight diameters, so narrow up the front sight, narrow up the back sights. That'll help you with that, and you can still run the shorter gun. And then your other option is to build a gun that is in between, right? So you could build a 4.6 or a 4.25 slide, and then run a big long, block on the front to get that sight out there. The only reason this brings up a good point in that when you talk in the world about when you talk about guns, your eyesight is a thing, right? And so go talk in the general world, and we either read a book or we drive a car. We read a book or we drive a car. Well, we don't do that. We look here. This is, in my own made-up term, is mid-vision. Right? Your optometrist doesn't even think about that. He's like, why would you be 8 inches away from your TV or hold a book out so far? Your arm hurts. So the only reason to run that long sight, and you see this with the older pro shooters, is because you can't see that front sight anymore, right? We can't figure out some balance to see that sight. So the only time I would do that is if I couldn't focus on the front sight. I would run a longer one. Otherwise, I think you're really good in the 4.6. And you could stretch it out to 5, but that's the only thing in my mind. The wielding those pistols is not better. I mean, the more weight I take, weight from here out to here, it just doesn't point as well. And then the other part, you get into 3-gun, and that equation's different again with 9 minor, is we don't usually run a heavy steel grip on 3-gun. Because why would I want to run around with a heavy gun on my hip loaded that I might have to jump over, climb on top of a tank, or whatever I got to do in 3-gun. Same thing with tactical games. Like if you're moving around with the gun, let's make the gun lighter. And so the longer the gun is with this part, this part's light with aluminum, and then the longer the gun is, it just doesn't point as well. It doesn't move as well. So yeah, I'm not. I know guys are out there screaming it's the greatest thing, but I don't see that when I shoot them.
Cool. I think Charlie has a question here that's actually Charlie Perez with a question that's too complicated for me to explain. Charlie, can you jump on here?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had a question about, it seems like a lot of the 2011 design, since the patent has expired, a lot of companies are making good parts and better parts and metal grips and a bunch of different stuff, kind of like beyond what the design was initially made for. And I was wondering if there's like thoughts around making a different or an evolution of that grip versus frame attachment on that high cap pistol kind of design. It kind of diverges away from that original STR SV design.
So the awful thing about our guns are high cap 1911s. We can't call them 2011s, but the original 2011 design, they never released the drawings, so we don't have all the technical data of what even that should have been, and so there is no basis. It's just been the Wild West from the get-go. And for anybody who's new or doesn't know about the high cap 1911s, there's a couple of different ways to get to this equation, but the modular system, so this grip is not attached to this frame, right? It bolts on. That had a patent for 20 years, and two companies shared in the patent, SVI and STI. And so if you were going to build one of these guns, you were going to buy a frame from one of the two, and in the later years, only STI sold them, and then you were going to build a gun. And so part of the problem we saw, even in that period of time, even though I wasn't building all the guns, but I've seen a lot of the parts from then, is they had a lot of internal variances. So what they didn't do, the proper way to build anything is to have an original print set, build to that print set, and hold your tolerances and stay with that. And what we really saw happen throughout the years is that those things varied a lot, and there wasn't a version 1, 2, or 3, or if there are, they're internal and no one knows what they are. So it's a really hard question to answer because this has kind of been a floating ball. There is no standard, or there is nothing to base it off of. So over time, I think the quality is going up, but I think the quality is going up because of competition, because you need a better gun to compete in the marketplace. The other part about this equation that's really interesting is that Morgan's over there making face. She's holding up like 8 signs. So this is going to be a minute, Morgan. That's what I'm getting at. The marketplace for these guns is teeny. So the 1911's maybe the most prolific or famous handgun in the world. I can't even imagine how many have been sold. The wide body version, no one's taken this to the general public. No one's been able to get this thing. You go into most gun shops and people still don't necessarily, even if it's on the shelf, don't really know what it is. And so I think that's going to change. There's some folks working on different parts of that, but it's been a slow 30-year ramp up here, and we're not there where this is super common. So I think the quality race that you're seeing now is just because there's a bunch of people who are building really good guns, and that's forcing everyone else to kind of raise the bar or just stay alive. But I don't know, does that totally answer your question, Charlie?
Yeah, the answer is pretty good.
All right. I'm reading and talking. She's going to throw one of these at me if I don't answer it. Hyperion without a steel grip. Why would you? It's better with the aluminum grip than the steel grip, and it weighs less, and that was the goal with 3-gun. I'm sure it could be done. I've shot them with steel grips. It's not a better gun unless you had a really, really, really weak grip. Narrow front sight coming soon. Yeah, it'll be a little bit before we probably spool up the Alice front sights, but Manny Bragg, I took a class with Manny Bragg, I don't know, maybe even a decade ago. And Manny has his own sight. Brazos sells it. It's called Manny Dot, and it's a 70 in the front, and I usually pair that if I'm running that sight with 100, 105 in the rear. So if you have a 70 front sight, what does that do? It does two things. At distance, it makes your front sight really narrow on the target, so it gives you a ton of target feedback. So shooting plates at 40 or 50 yards is easy. And it's really a problem if you leave the rear sight huge, because if you got a big window gap there, it makes it hard to do that judgment. But if you narrow up the rear sight, it's really, really good for distance shooting. It will slow you down when you get to the closer targets, right? Because you're getting way more information than you need to. Depending on how your brain processes that information, it potentially slows you down. So that's my experience. It slows me down a little bit in the front, helps me a lot in the back. I tend to run a sight in the middle now. For 3-gun, I run a 90 in the front, and for USPSA, I think last season I ran a 70, but I could run a 70 or 90 interchangeable. Nobody makes an 80. It'd probably be awesome. Maybe we'll be the first ones to do that, but front sights aren't on my super short list to get done. Probably by the end of the year. Next question, when will we export? Yeah, we turned off all the export through the individual companies. if you need a gun from Atlas and not in the U.S., the only way that we're really doing it at the moment is Rainier Arms has an export division, so Rainier Arms could help you out with that. And then we'll full tilt turn on exporting probably for 21. The part of we probably would have been ready or close to doing it in 2020, but they changed a bunch of the rules this year coming in through 2020. And we knew the rule changes were coming, and then the government kind of wavered on some stuff, and it wasn't really solidified. So we didn't want to take the time to learn a rule set that might get changed. So 2021, we're hoping to have some dealers all around the world. Morgan's saying, screaming, tell everyone that these guns are in stock. Hopefully they're on the Arnzen website too. I think that was the goal.
Yeah. So if you go to arnzenarms.com and the best way to see all the guns right now is just go to the brand search and put in Atlas Gunworks. We've got everything that's available currently at Atlas and in our inventory here in-house. Something like 9 or 11 guns right now. And with all the high capacity guns, the 40s and the 9s, we've got 1 extra magazine and 1 year of service with those. It doesn't matter where you buy them from. So they're there. And there's a couple of Nemesises. There's some Hyperions. We have an Athena here. I think there's one there as well. We've got this, I've got a Helios here. I'm not sure what's behind you.
I think we've got a Helios, 2 Nemesis guns, and this Hyperion.
It's a damn shame that Chrome Nemesis hasn't been spoken for yet. That is probably one of the sexiest pistols I've ever seen. I think
Morgan's screaming at me that she's going to make me read it. So there's a 9mm Titan DLC all black coming. There's a 9mm two-tone coming. There's a Hyperion two-tone coming, probably all tomorrow. A Nemesis 40 and a gray Nemesis. One's black, one's gray. And there's some 45 guns. We're doing the Titans in 45. We've done them over the years, and you don't get enough phone calls, but every time we build one, we sell them. So that'll be a thing kind of recurring. If you're a 45 lover, the Nemesis we've done them in Nemesis too, but that's a custom gun. But the Titan 45 is going to be hopefully on the shelf all the time.
And I just pulled it up on my phone here, going through, went into brands and down to Atlas Gunworks. They're all popping up on there right now, so you can go on and you can dig in and look and see what all is available through there.
Or if you got questions and you're not comfortable buying a $5,000 handgun sight unseen by clicking add to cart, you can call the shop. So that's Matt Barnhart's here answering phones. He knows a ton about these. It's 952-944-1875 extension 2. And even though we've been 2 days late on getting phone calls back lately because it's been so dang busy, tonight you got direct access. You got bat phone privileges to Matt Barnhart.
Yes.
Matt just got his Hyperion, I think last week.
Which he's got an orange grip on his, and I mean I love orange ammo anyway, but that gun looks amazing with that orange grip on there.
I tortured him that he was never going to get it because of all the closures. I'm like, that orange one went somewhere where they're like, COVID shut down. You're screwed. He
was a week away from that happening. One of our anodizers did shut down, and I think they had that, and it was like that box showed up, and that day their website said that they had shut it down. Morgan has a sign that says, "Would a site block help a Hyperion? Stop sharing secrets." I don't know if that's all from the customer. There is a site block version of this gun in prototype, so it'll be a bit before it's out. A good bit. It's a complicated equation. And we talked earlier about the Hyperion L that we had made, and it just wasn't phenomenally better, but someday.
Handing that one. Matty wants to show off his new toy.
Hey, there he is. Oh.
Matt, here's your.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
So here it is.
Step up to the mic, bro.
Oh, okay. Cool. Here it is. A little bit of a custom touch in a Hyperion. Pretty much the same. Only difference is I had a little bit of extra polishing done to it.
He's short. You have to.
This is true. Had a little bit of extra polishing done on the frame, on the controls, and we did a flush cut barrel. And then, of course, the orange anodized grip, which turned out amazing.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like almost battle worn anodized orange. So it's pretty sweet.
Cool. Now let's hold that up to the camera so you can actually see it. So full custom still lives. There she is.
Morgan's got a question that asks if we do financing. There's a couple cool things coming. I think there'll be financing before year end on the guns on the new website. I don't have a launch date for that, but in the next 6 months probably. And then currently, if you order one, it's a deposit. We usually take $2,000 down, and then you can pay in increments, or you can pay for the whole thing when it's done. But there's no timeline on that. It's interesting why do we take $2,000 down? And this came from the old time gun builders. So what used to happen is you'd have a gun builder, you go, whoever the person is, and they're famous and they got a 2 or 3 year or 10-year backlog. So you'd want a gun, but you'd get in line and wait. It used to kind of be a fun thing to have this process. Nobody wants to wait anymore, but that's the way it used to work back in the day. And so what they would do is they would take a deposit for whatever the parts cost. They would procure your parts, put them in a box with your name on it, and then two things would happen. If something happened to the gun builder, usually a one-man show, they would have your parts in a box with a name, and you could have your parts, or they'd have a partnership with another gun builder who would finish all their work. Whether if they couldn't work or if they died, and a lot of these guys worked into their 80s and 90s. So anyway, the reason for the $2,000 deposit is the parts are roughly $2,000. So kind of that same concept. You owned your parts. You've got a box full of parts. We're way bigger than that now. That probably it doesn't apply quite the same way because 2 weeks into your gun being ordered, it's already being worked on. But that's the reason for that. Our thought was always, you own your parts. Morgan's asking, where can I sell my STI? If I was going to sell a gun, I have not sold a gun in a while, but Ken's List is part of Practice Score. I would get on there. That would be my next. Somebody's asking, why is a sight block on a Hyperion potentially beneficial and a steel grip is not? The physics of that are interesting. So if I add a steel grip to this gun, it's going to add 7 or 8 ounces, give or take. And it's in the bottom of the gun, so that's a really good thing. I'm trying to make this be, move less or less violently and then come to the same spot. So does adding money to the bottom part of the pivot, make sense? Yeah, a ton. But then I got a heavier gun, right? Now I take my 35-ounce gun and get to 34 ounces or in almost 40 or over 40 as a starting point. And so with 9mm, I don't need it. I just don't need that weight. So why would I make the gun heavier than it needs to be? That's the short answer. And then the long answer, if you want to get into the details, is the sight block weighs a lot less than that, like 2 ounces. And when I do that, when I put a sight block up here, and even if it was in front of this, if anything shorter than a 5-inch gun, I shorten the reciprocating mass, right? So let's say I cut the slide off right here, and so this part that's moving is way further back, in this cycle of, because this is my furthest most point that moves is a big deal. So anytime I can move that back, I change how the gun works. And there's a limit. You go too far, you can't really get the guns to function the way you want. But there is an advantage to moving that back and then having a counterweight out front. So the short answer is you don't put a steel grip on a short gun like this just because you get into a weight category you don't want to be in right away. On 40 cal, it makes a lot of sense, right? Tame all that energy.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Somebody else asked it too, but like back in the old days, you used to talk a lot about how the magazine quality control manufacturing wasn't where you want it to be. Like, what do you consider the current state of magazines that are available?
Yeah, so we're using a couple different vendors for mags at the moment, but here's the real short answer on that, without hopefully upsetting anybody. The design is so stringent on the tolerances. So they really have to be in this narrow window of tolerances to work. And it's really hard to do that. And what we've seen, having done this I can't even tell you how many mags I've probably seen and tuned, but almost no one's able forever to hit that mark. So we're sitting here in beginning of quarter two in 2020, and right now the STI mags are about is where they were. Not a lot's changed there in the last bit. They turned them black, but it didn't really change the mags much from a dimensional standpoint. And then you're seeing the guns now sometimes ship with MBX mags. They've been really dialed in, and so I ran a set of MBX mags, or half my mags were MBX last season, all season, and really without any problems. And then came into the fall and we worked a deal to put those back in the guns. But the process to manufacture those is so difficult that the tolerance is wide, and that's not the magazine manufacturer's fault as much as the design fault, right? I would make a strong argument that the weakest they built this cool gun, right? This is my favorite gun on the planet, this design. And then it seems like they built the gun and they took 6 days, and then all of a sudden they were on, they came back on Monday morning and they're like, oh, we're going to need a mag for that. And the mag was quick. It seems like that. The design for the mag is limiting. And so the total answer to your question, Amax, is it's a rolling thing, right? Who's doing a really good job of manufacturing right now? But in this quarter, I wouldn't be afraid to buy MBX mags. And if you buy the STI mags, you're gonna have to tune them, and they're a little softer, so they're more work. But it's essentially the same place we were at 5 or 6 months ago. I think it's getting better. I think everybody's getting better at making mags. The problem you have with there's only one big boy in this arena is SCI. They're like a big cargo ship, so they move so slow. But I think you'll see better mags come out of there at some point soon too.
All right, so we got like 3 minutes left before we've got to wrap this up here at the shop. So let's rapid fire a couple more questions and then we'll close her down.
I've got a couple over here.
Yeah, cool. Close out. It sounds like you guys have some left. We're done here. So.
Yeah. So everybody wants really cool colors. So Tater Tot wants to know about red magwells is the question. But so he's one of the team guys. So people are like, oh, can I get a red slide? So this will end up with a coding conversation. But I can't turn steel red without painting it. And we don't paint stuff here because it just doesn't hold up on stuff you use. My joke always is you don't paint your car if you parked it in a holster every night, right? You drive a car with stainless fenders or aluminum fenders or whatever. And so some of the parts now on the guns, the trigger, the grip in this gun, and the magwell in this gun are all aluminum. We can anodize those like that orange one and get really cool colors. Anodizing is a really tricky process. We don't do it in-house, and it's really hard to get the same color over and over again. So what you have happen is you get a batch of red back, and it looks beautiful. It's nice deep red. And then 2 weeks later, you get another batch with let's say, other parts in it, triggers instead of magwells, and it's pink, or it's a different shade, or whatever, and they don't match. So the only way to really, you'll see us sometimes sell kits called Color Match, where we send out 4 or 5 parts and have them all done at once. They're the same because they got done in the same batch. But batch-to-batch variance in the anodizing is horrendously difficult, and it's super expensive. You tie up tons of inventory, and there's a lot of redo. So there's a reason that Mark made a comment to me a while ago, we're the black gun company for pistols, but the only reason for that is when you get the guns DLC coded, they run black every day. It's the best coating you can get for for this kind of thing. It's easy to take off and reapply if we want to make the gun look brand new down the road. And they run it every single day, and they're way better at black than they are at any other color. And we love the grays. We had one gray gun go back like 4 times. Like the color, the vapor guys just couldn't, and that's their mix on their end. There's nothing I can do about that. But if every time's 2 or 3 weeks, all of a sudden we're holding the gun for 5 or 6 months trying to get the color right. So the reason we do most of our stuff in black is because it's your most predictable result. Oh, the weight of the Erebus. Somebody's asking. I'm going to guess that they're right under 40 ounces. I'll be close. Best grip safety is mandatory. So somebody's asking about what grip safety you want. There's no magic answer to that. You typically want a grip safety made to fit in your grip. So all the metal guys, you'd want one made by whoever made the grip. That is a short answer there. Are you cutting us off hard here at 7:30 mark?
Oh,
or?
no, we're not cutting it off hard. I'm just, we were half past already. And I got, there's people with babies that got to get home to them. Plus, I'm paying by the hour over here.
Most of the gun weights are going to be on the website coming up soon, and we'll start there's some really cool stuff coming. So, I guess we'll leave you with the Atlas update, but there's a brand new, big, crazy, fancy website in production. So that'll be awesome. But what we're going to do is make it a lot easier for the consumer who already has the gun. So you go on the Hyperion page, and we're going to tell you what recoil springs on there, and there'll be a link if you want to buy them. I'm working on doing a recoil spring kit for each of the guns, so you could change the weights and see how they, the return to zero works. Buy the +1 or 2, and if we can get the halves worked out, it'd maybe be 5 of them. And then it would also tell you the generic data on the gun, the weights of the guns, and those sort of things. And then it would give magwell options, all that stuff. So you'll see the options on the website be a little more user-friendly as far as, hey, I already got one of these. What's my next step on, like, changing a recoil spring or changing a mainspring? We'll be a little more technical in our data here. So that's all coming. Fancy stuff coming, I guess, on the website side. Some cool prototype guns coming for the fall. IPSC 40 cal guns coming. There's some fun stuff here. We're prototyping hard. And that's all I got, I guess.
Adam, thanks so much for doing this, for making the time. This has been super fun.
Awesome.
Really cool.
Everybody check out Arnzen Arms. I'll see you guys soon.
Right on. And then thanks everybody that joined us on the Zoom, on the Facebook and all that. We're going to be going live with JP Rifles either next Monday or Thursday. I'll get that out in confirmation. So please check that out. And then we're in conversations with this optics company, Rams the Ortex, to do one right after that. And, we're going to try to keep these going and keep you guys entertained and give you good information for the next few weeks and months as we deal with what's going on in the marketplace. And then hopefully just ongoingly, because this has been a hell of a good time. So thank you all. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves.
See you on the range soon.
We'll see you on the range soon.